There have been 5 mass extinctions in Earth's 4.5 billion years of history, and scientists argue we may be witnessing another one right now. The Wildlife Conservation Society aims to protect the precious species that we are losing at alarming rates. I have read several articles and books on the extinction and endangerment of Earth's species, and am studying the environmental impacts of that through Eastern's Environmental Science program. In this speech, I will go over the current threats to the world's wildlife, how the Wildlife Conservation Society can solve the problem of species extinction, and why you should be a part of the solution. Elephants, chimpanzees, coastal dolphins, tigers, these are just a handful of species that are threatened or endangered and are a target species for the Wildlife Conservation Society. They all face threats from human activity, from things like fishing and hunting to the destruction of their habitats. Plants and animals are becoming increasingly at risk of extinction, which threatens our planet's biodiversity. And biodiversity may not seem very important, but it's actually a crucial factor for a healthy environment. In his book, The Myth of Progress Toward a Sustainable Future, Tom Wessels writes that in an ecosystem with low species richness or low biodiversity, the loss of a single species may cascade through an entire system, disrupting its function. In an ecosystem with high species richness or high biodiversity, the probability that the loss of a single species will cause a similar level of disruption is much lower, due to greater repetition in species' ecological roles. So what this means is that when we lose one species to extinction, it is likely that there are numerous other species we will lose too, since most of them have co-evolved with others and actually rely on the other's presence for survival. And one group of animals particularly in danger are amphibians. This is actually quite shocking because amphibians are arguably the most resilient species on Earth. They've been around not just longer than mammals, say, or birds. They've been around since before there were dinosaurs, writes Elizabeth Kolbert in her book, The Sixth Extinction. The Animal Welfare Institute states that 40% of amphibians are threatened with extinction due to human activity. And according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, there are 715 species listed as threatened or endangered in the United States alone, and 26 of those in Michigan. If we allow this problem to persist, soon we will see less and less plants and animals in our community and risk losing countless others who have come to co-evolve with and rely on those species. One organization making great efforts to reduce this problem is the Wildlife Conservation Society. They rely on passionate people like us and wildlife specialists to conserve species habitats and protect those species whose habitats have already been destroyed. On the Wildlife Conservation Society's website, they state that their goal is to conserve the world's largest wild places in 14 priority regions, home to more than 50% of the world's biodiversity. The Wildlife Conservation Society was established in 1895, mainly to establish a zoological park and to promote the study of zoology. But today, as we are in the midst of a possible 6th mass extinction, the Wildlife Conservation Society has adapted their goals and methods to deal more intensively with the problem of species endangerment. They now have 5 zoos, which serve as protection for the endangered species, and they also work to protect natural environments from human exploitation, so things like fishing, hunting, deforestation, urban development, and they also combat wildlife trafficking and manage health threats to endangered wildlife. One animal on the list of target species, the tiger, is especially susceptible to be killed in large numbers. They're killed for their bones, their skin, and their meat can be sold on a luxury market. So the Wildlife Conservation Society collaborates with local governments to create protected areas for the tigers and support local enforcement agencies who can capture the illegal poachers and traffickers. The Wildlife Conservation Society needs funding to pay for their field researchers, their lab research, healthcare for sick animals, and to run their zoos and aquariums. Animals across the globe don't have to suffer. On top of everything else going on in the world right now, Potentially the most catastrophic would be a mass extinction of wildlife. I know that we don't want to live in a world overrun by illegal poachers and development. If we can give just a little bit to help fund research and conservation, we can turn back on this path that we're already headed down. We can save the precious species and their habitats that remain on our planet. The Wildlife Conservation Society can help solve the problem of species endangerment. I ask you to donate any amount you can spare to this charity. We are facing the very real possibility of a sixth mass extinction, and the Wildlife Conservation Society relies on donations to keep up their conservation efforts. We can and we must be a part of the solution. In the book, The Sixth Extinction, Colbert mentions a handful of organizations which we can donate to help protect our future, including the Wildlife Conservation Society. She asks us, isn't the whole point of trying to peer into the future so that seeing dangers ahead, we can change course to avoid them? I want to make sure that no more endangered tigers are killed and sold for their luxury parts. I will take action to save the tiger, but I can't do it alone. I need your help to protect the tigers and the many other species facing extinction due to human activity.